Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today we are concluding our look at the Crown of Feathers trilogy with Wings of Shadow, published in July of 2021, written by Nikki Pau-Preto. As always, there is a blanket spoiler warning in place, just in case I decide to go into spoilers because I'm doing these unscripted. And before we get into the review proper, first the logistics of it. I did the audiobook, so Wings of Shadow is about a little over 22 hours long and about 70 plus chapters. That's about as accurate as I can be because on the audiobook that I listened to it on Audible, everything is listed as a chapter. So, the opening credits and the title, the end credits, there's the prologue, there's like a glossary of terms, there's a timeline of events in this world. It's all listed as a chapter, so which totals up to about, I think, like 75 chapters. But I think the narrative itself is just a little over 70. Like, I think it's 72 or 73. But, yeah, so moving on. The book is okay. Like, I finished it Thursday, and now that I have time to record, I'm not really remembering a bunch of the specifics and the details. Like, nothing stuck with me. I don't regret reading it, but just nothing sticking with me is all. Like, I could recommend it, especially Crown of Feathers. That was really good. I think it might be my favorite in the trilogy. The problem is I spaced these so far apart that I'm not really remembering a lot of specifics about the books. Just like the big plot points and a few minor things. Anyway, so Wings of Shadow is told from 6, technically 8 points of view. So returning from Crown of Feathers, we have Veronica, Tristan, and Sev. Returning from Heart of Flames, we have Elliot and Valkyra. And new to Wings of Shadow, we have Sparrow. Along with that, we have an occasional bookend to a chapter, which are cited from historical texts, the historical texts of this world, exchanges in letters, etc., that kind of help develop the world building. And each chapter opens with a quote from another character, eventually building up a story of its own. In Heart of Flames, these quotes were all from Feronia, Veronica's deceased mother. Was it Feronia in Crown of Feathers? It was either Feronia or Valkyra, I don't remember. Here, it's Ignix. Ignix was a character introduced in Heart of Flames. She was originally thought to just be a phoenix Valkyra tried to control. But then, after Veronica frees her, we learn that it was Ignix, the first phoenix. And that is who is giving the little blurbs and quotes that open every chapter this time around. In my review of the first 2 books, I noticed that a lot of time was given to Veronica in particular. She is essentially the main protagonist, given what the way the events of the story play out, but a lot of times I wasn't particularly interested or invested in her plotline. Like, I thought in Heart of Flames and Crown of Feathers, Sev had the most interesting plotline, but his plotline was also one of the shorter ones in the book. The point I'm trying to get to is that here, it feels like the POVs are all divided a little better. Some people still get more time than others, but it doesn't feel like the narrative is favoring Veronica as much as the first 2 books did. But like I said, there are still some that do kind of get underdeveloped. For example, it's really disappointing that Cade wasn't a POV character in this book. He's been such a major character throughout this series, from Crown of Feathers all the way to now. Made even weirder by the fact that towards the end of Heart of Flames, he actually got a chapter from his POV. So it's just really weird that he is not a POV character in this book. Especially because, like, Sparrow doesn't really contribute much from her point of view. Sparrow was another character introduced way back in Crown of Feathers. She is an animage who befriends Val, and she's blind. I don't remember talking about her at all in my review of Crown of Feathers because she doesn't really contribute much. but she plays a little bit of a bigger role in Heart of Flames, particularly in Elliot's point of view. And it's sort of the same thing here. She plays a bigger role in Elliot's point of view than she does in the overall narrative, but she gets her own point of view as well in around like the middle third of the book, I'd say. Basically, she kind of shows up. We see her point of view just as Avalkira makes one of her first attacks. I'll hopefully remember to talk about that later. And then she sort of gets trapped in a collapsed tunnel with Ignix. And throughout this portion of the book, Elliot's point of view is about sort of abandoning the Phoenix Riders, with Veronica's permission, and going to rescue her. And once Sparrow gets rescued, she still plays a role in the later half of the book, but we don't see her point of view again. This was kind of my problem with Elliot's point of view in Heart of Flames. Like, he's very prominent in the first third of the book, but once the action moves away from where he's located, we don't see him after that first third of the book. And it's the same thing here. Before I get... Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, before I get to some of the other points of views and their particular plot lines, I do want to say that overall, my overall thoughts on this trilogy, again, it's fine. I don't regret reading it, but it's not really anything special. If anything, it feels like it's trying to be the next big young adult series. You know, like there was Harry Potter, and then there was Twilight, and then there was The Hunger Games. It feels like Crown of Feathers feels like it's trying to be the next thing to fill that void. And there's nothing particularly wrong with it. It's a little basic, a little tropey. I kind of hate to say that because it feels like in reviews of fiction, be it movies, TV shows, books, comics, etc., it feels like trope has become such a dirty word. It's not, and it shouldn't be. You know, like anything else, it's a tool. It's a tool used to tell the story. And I feel like people who complain, and don't get me wrong, there are times to complain or criticize a trope being used, but it feels like people just say trope like a dirty word. Like it's like, oh, this is just a trope. It's like, yeah, and tropes exist. But yeah, that's just really it. A lot of this story, especially in this entry, is a little basic. So what are, like, you know, this is actually a perfect time to pivot to Avalkira's point of view. Because, so from the end of the last book, Heart of Flames, and throughout this book, Avalkira has procured a Strix. In the world of Crown of Feathers, Strixes are like essentially anti-phoenixes. They're birds of shadow and darkness that feed on life. Whoops, I forgot to plug in my laptop. Strixes are birds of darkness and shadow that feed on life, whereas phoenixes are sort of birds of light and fire, and, you know, they're sort of life bringers. So Avalkira has, after being rejected by a phoenix and rejected by her sister Veronica, Avalkira has procured a Strix, and she is essentially descending into madness. You know, she keeps thinking that she just wants to watch the world burn. That's a good way to say that. And she thinks that if she cannot sway Veronica to her side, she'll just kill her. The problem is she never really sticks to her resolve. She keeps wanting Veronica by her side, which is the most interesting thing about Avalkira's points of view. Despite this bloody, angry, vengeful resolve she has, she does not want to bring herself to kill her sister, her niece. Long story. And not in the Alabama way. In fact, like the ending, Avalkira's death is actually one of the most poignant moments in the book. After she's defeated, you know, she's the last one standing, she still challenges Veronica to a fight. Like, Avalkira has lost. Veronica realizes this, so she won't fight her, but Val wants her to fight because that's all she knows. Like I said, the moments leading up to that point and to Avalkira's death are probably the most poignant moments in the book. Veronica's plotline here is really basic, sadly. Like, now that she knows she's the daughter of Feronia, she's an Ashfire and the heir to the throne, she is having this debate over whether or not she should even take the throne, whether or not she's even ready, whether or not the world needs a new queen. And it's just, this is something we've seen dozens of times, and it's one of the weaker elements of the book. It's not bad, but it's just a storyline that's kind of done to death. This, in fantasy, the story of the reluctant ruler who is debating whether or not they actually should be a ruler. And Crown of Feathers does nothing new or interesting with it. Same with Sev. Sev was one of my favorite characters in the first two books because he had one of the most intense, thrilling plot lines, you know, as sort of a spy behind enemy lines. So Wings of Shadow picks up where Heart of Flames left off. He is working for Lord Roland, a nobleman who wants to start a war with the Phoenix Riders because he has designs on the throne himself. But he is supplying information back to the Phoenix Riders. The problem is the Lord Roland stuff gets resolved very early in the book, almost anticlimactically. Like, I'd say like in the first 20 to 30 chapters, the Lord Roland stuff gets figured out and done. And then sort of like the rest of Sev's plotline for the rest of the book is Sev feeling like he doesn't know what to do anymore. He feels useless, and now that Cade has a phoenix, Cade being Sev's romantic interest, Sev feels like he's in the way, and it's just, I really hate these kind of sudden inferiority complex plot lines. It's just, they're kind of cringe-inducing, if I'm being honest. One, because some of them are relatable, and I really hate watching that play out in fiction. And two, it's just, again, it's just something done to death. And most of the times I see this plot line, it's going through the basic routes. They don't do anything original with it or unique with it. If I'm being honest, just for a comparison, the best I've ever seen this inferiority complex plotline ever done is Skate the Infinity. It's a really good anime. You should check it out. So, and Tristan's plotline, similarly, a lot of it is done in conjunction with Veronica's. Like, because they spend so much time together in this book, Veronica and Tristan's plotlines happen concurrently. A lot of it is just, they'll both witness an event, and then it'll be their specific points of view on what they're witnessing. Very often do they veer into their own things. It lends a sort of cohesion to the book, to the narrative itself. I feel like I had more to say there, but I really don't. It lends a sense of cohesion to the book that I actually feel Crown of Feathers and Heart of Flames were lacking, because the different POVs were all doing different things. But I'm kind of just rambling at this point, so I'm going to try and wrap up with some of my few other nitpicks. The side characters, most of them are not developed great. Like, they're characters who we have followed since the first, who we met back in the first book, and just, we still hardly know anything about them. That's kind of a weakness, not of this book in particular, but of doing the third-person limited point of view. Which, just quick rundown, when you're writing narrative fiction, there are 4 points of view you can write from. So we have first person. You are in the point of view of the protagonist or the POV character, whoever it is. You'll often see this character referring to themselves using I, me, and so on. Third person. Like, think of the third person as a bird's eye view of the story. You are a spectator to events from the outside. And then there are 2 other points of view. There is limited. You are only seeing the thoughts, insights, and feelings of whoever your protagonist is. And there is omniscient, which, godlike. You can see the thoughts, insights, and feelings of every character. So to circle back around, there are 4 points of view you can generally write fiction from: first person limited, first person omniscient, third person omniscient, and third person limited, which is what the Crown of Feathers trilogy is written from. And it's just a weakness of the third person limited POV that you don't get insights into side characters. Like, a lot of these side characters that we met way back in the first book are still not developed. They're just there to say stuff and be there in group scenes. And unfortunately, in the climax of this book, when some of those characters start dying, you don't feel anything for them because they were never properly developed. Like, the most interesting side characters we get, like the only side characters we get any development on, are Cassian, Tristan's father, Cade, who I talked about already, Alexia, a Phoenix Rider who sided with Avalkira in the Blood War, and Veronica's aunt, her paternal aunt, Sidra, Avalkira's another former Phoenix Rider from the Blood War and Avalkira's henchman, and Dorian, again another Phoenix Rider from the Blood War who does not want to work with Avalkira again. And same thing with the Phoenixes. Like, one of the most disappointing things about this trilogy as a whole is there is so much emphasis based on the Phoenixes. I kind of hate to compare it to Lord of the Rings because it feels like every contemporary fantasy gets compared to Lord of the Rings, but there really is no better way to describe this. The Phoenixes of Crown of Feathers are like Tolkien's eagles. You know, they're not just beasts of burden. They are they have almost a human level sentience. And it's kind of disappointing because there is almost no emphasis on the Phoenixes. Like, I would have loved a POV from Zephyra, Veronica's Phoenix, or Rex, Tristan's Phoenix, just for the importance that this world places on the Phoenixes. We don't get a lot about them. Like, I don't know what kind of character Zephyra is, as an example. And it's really noticeable in this plotline once the Strixes get introduced with Onyx, Avalkira Strix, because it should, as the inverse of the Phoenix, it should kind of be the same thing. But yeah, I think talking about it, I made my point of view sound much more negative than it is. Again, Wings of Shadow is fine. It's not reinventing the wheel, and sometimes you don't need to do that. The Crown of Feathers trilogy on the whole is okay. Like I said, I don't regret reading it. It just didn't stick with me. But those are my thoughts. Have you read Wings of Shadow? Please, what are yours? Start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. And in the description box below, you'll find the links to my socials where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.